Welcome back to Our Canada, Our Future. We're talking about the Convoy protests from this past January and February with Professor Malcolm Bird at the University of Winnipeg. Professor Bird, I just wanted to talk maybe more broadly about, maybe we could just call it political polarization. This has obviously been a sort of growing concern across the Western world over the last 5 to 10 years. And I wanted to get your thoughts on whether you see this trend happening in Canada as well. Some people argue it's actually a myth. Some people say it is happening just like everywhere else. What's your take?
Well, I think it is happening here in Canada. And if I could sort of look at one cause, it would be the I don't want to say collapse of the left, but perhaps the altering of sort of the political and the ideological left to be not very interested in the conditions of working people. So working people throughout the West, particularly in the United States and in Britain, have really suffered largely because of things like globalization. They've lost their manufacturing jobs. And what traditionally their concerns were reflected in the Democratic Party and obviously the NDP party here, and much of the left is now not concerned with the material conditions facing working people. They're concerned with climate change. They're concerned with identity politics, and so that is part of the reason why the hardships that working people have faced has not entered into the political sphere. And that's a lot of the reason why people like Donald Trump and obviously Brexit occurred and were elected, because they were speaking to the challenges that working people are facing. Here in Canada, we're seeing a similar dynamic occur where the Conservative Party is realizing that they need to come up with viable policies to help working people, continue to live a high standard of living, because of course real wages have either declined or stagnated over the last 40 to 50 years.
We've seen a lot in recent years. Obviously, you mentioned the US and the UK, sort of working class, formerly Democrat voters in the US switching to vote Republican for Donald Trump. And then more recently in the United Kingdom, where we saw some parts of Northern England, which had never voted Conservative in 100 years, voting Conservative for the first time under Boris Johnson. Do you see anything like that taking place here in Canada? Do you see anyone, I know there's a Conservative leadership race underway right now. Are the themes and discussions that you're seeing take place in this race, do they suggest that there's a sort of similar thing happening here in Canada as well?
Yeah, I think there is. Now, I mean, the nice thing about Canada is that we're extremely wealthy, and we have a pretty, for the time being, we have a pretty strong welfare state that redistributes goods and services amongst the people. So that makes us a little different than the United States. But I most certainly think that we are, particularly with the case of inflation, which is going to eat away people's standard of living very, very quickly. This is going to further polarize the difference, the standing of working people versus others. Of course, I also think that there's a cultural component here, where people who work with their hands, live in rural and remote communities, feel increasingly alienated from urban cosmopolitan folks, and so I think that there's a good chance that this is going to occur here. And certainly when we look at the Conservative leadership race, Mr. Pierre Poilievre, I think that's how you say it, is really addressing very basic concerns of Canadians: inflation, housing prices, jobs. How is Canada gonna make wealth? What's the role of our oil and gas sector in our economy? I mean, those are really, really important and core questions that need to be addressed. And he, as well as some others, are addressing them. And I think that will bode well for them in the future.
Okay, we've only got about 30 seconds and it's a bit of a big question, so feel free to pick it up after the break as well. You talked about the disconnect between different perspectives, sort of blue collar and white collar. There's always been those types of jobs. And so what explains the reason why now that, these two groups don't seem to be able to understand where the other is coming from? Sorry, we've only got about 10 seconds.
Well, I don't think there's a lot of intermixing. To put it really simply, I think you can talk in your echo chamber online and not interact with other people.